This is the story of Heather Saul, a woman who, when faced with death, didn't freeze. She fought back, grabbed a loaded gun, and stopped a man the police now believe was a serial killer in the making. What they found in his car shocked investigators and likely saved lives. Heather Saul lived in Martinsburg, West Virginia. She was a sex worker, operating primarily through online listings. Like many in that line of work, she knew the risks. But in 2015, she encountered a client who wasn't just dangerous, he was predatory. The man who arrived at her home was 45-year-old Neil Falls. He seemed calm, polite, almost forgettable. He'd found Heather's ad online and scheduled a meeting. But the moment he stepped through the door, things changed, instantly and violently. Heather said he pulled out a gun and told her, "Live or die." That's how quickly the encounter turned deadly. Neil Falls didn't come to Heather Saul's home on impulse. He came equipped, armed, and with a plan. He rang the doorbell under the pretense of being a client. But the moment she opened the door and turned her back, he attacked. He shoved her inside and pulled out a handgun. Calmly, coldly, he asked her one question: live or die? There was no struggle for power. He thought he had it. Every move was calculated. And it became immediately clear. This man hadn't come for anything transactional. He had come to kill. Then he began to strangle her. Heather was forced to the floor, gasping for air as his hands wrapped tightly around her throat. Her vision blurred. Her arms flailed. Panic set in. But so did instinct. She didn't freeze. She didn't give up. She fought back. As her body slipped into survival mode, she reached out blindly, her hand brushing against cold steel. His gun, the one he had brought to control her. With every ounce of strength she had left, Heather managed to grab the gun, turn it back toward him, and fire. The bullet struck Neil Falls in the head. He collapsed instantly, dead before he hit the floor. The same weapon he had intended to use on her became the instrument of his own destruction. Heather's survival wasn't just an act of self-defense, it was sheer mental clarity and presence of mind under unimaginable pressure. Faced with certain death, she made a single, split-second decision, and in doing so, changed everything. When police arrived, they expected to find a one-off incident, a violent attack with a tragic twist. But when they looked inside Neil Falls' vehicle, the entire situation changed. There, in the trunk of his car, was a complete kill kit. 4 sets of handcuffs, knives and axes, a shovel, bleach, trash bags, and cleaning supplies, bulletproof vest, a list of names, believed to be potential future victims. It was a mobile murder setup, and this wasn't a first-time offender. Police soon connected Falls to several unsolved murders of sex workers across Ohio, Nevada, and Illinois. While definitive charges were never filed due to his death, investigators now believe Heather stopped a man in the middle of a killing spree. Neil Falls had no violent criminal record. On paper, he looked ordinary. But behind that paper trail was a deeply disturbing man, hiding in plain sight. Born and raised in Oregon, Falls had worked as a security guard and even passed federal background checks to gain employment at high-level facilities. He knew how to follow rules, at least the ones that kept him out of databases. To the outside world, he was unremarkable, quiet, forgettable. But his private life was unraveling. Co-workers and acquaintances later described a shift in his demeanor during the years leading up to 2015. His behavior grew erratic. He was fixated on firearms, obsessed with survivalist gear, and consumed violent pornography that blurred fantasy and reality. In 2008, he was fired from his job at a federal facility for harassment. After that, he dropped off the map. No stable address, no stable life. He became a drifter. He crisscrossed the country, popping up in states like Nevada, Illinois, and Ohio, each time near areas where unsolved murders of sex workers occurred. Women found dismembered, dumped in rivers, buried in shallow graves. While his name was never definitively linked to the crimes, the pattern was chilling. He used online escort platforms to locate his targets. He knew how to isolate them. He understood how to exploit gaps in law enforcement attention, especially when the victims came from marginalized communities. His car trunk wasn't just a kill kit, it was a mobile hunting ground. When he knocked on Heather Saul's door, it's likely he believed she would be his next victim. What he didn't expect was that she would be his last. When the shooting was first reported, police arrived to a shocking scene. A man dead on the floor and a visibly shaken woman claiming she had acted in self-defense. It didn't take long for the facts to align with her story. There were no charges filed. Investigators quickly ruled that Heather Saul had acted to save her own life. But what made Heather Saul's case different wasn't just that she survived, it was what came next. She wasn't treated like a suspect. She wasn't ignored. She wasn't buried in red tape. For once, the system paused to recognize something extraordinary. Heather, a sex worker, had just stopped a man the justice system never saw coming. A man who carried duct tape, bleach, handcuffs, and a list of names. A man they now believe was actively hunting women. News outlets across the country picked up her story. Headlines praised her as brave, resilient, and heroic. Some called her a warrior. Others described her as the woman who stopped a serial killer with his own gun. She became a symbol of survival in the most literal sense. But Heather didn't feel like a symbol. She didn't feel empowered. She felt broken. In interviews, she described vivid nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks. The emotional weight of taking a life, even in self-defense, didn't fade once the cameras disappeared. She was left to relive that night in police reports, in media questions, and in her own mind. Every retelling reopened the wound. The trauma didn't end with the gunshot. It started there. The headlines praised her. But the healing, that was hers alone. And for others in her line of work, her case became a grim reflection. Because if she hadn't lived, if she hadn't fought back, she likely would have been written off. Just another sex worker who didn't come home. Just another file labeled high-risk lifestyle. Another cold case with no urgency, no media, and no pressure to solve. That's the truth no one wants to say out loud. You're rarely treated as a victim until you survive. And even then, barely. Heather Saul's story is about more than one act of self-defense. It's about how violence hides in plain sight. How someone with no record, moving across state lines with a kill kit in his trunk, can go unnoticed until he picks the wrong woman. It's also about stigma. It's about how society categorizes victims, whose stories get told, and whose disappear. Heather forced the world to pay attention, not because she was seen as worthy, but because she fought back so hard no one could look away. In stopping Neil Falls, Heather didn't just survive an attack. She may have interrupted a killing spree in motion. Her act of survival exposed a predator and made it clear that justice, in many cases, doesn't come from the courts. Sometimes it comes from the victim refusing to be one. Heather Saul didn't choose to be a hero. She chose to live. And in doing so, she may have saved countless women from the same fate. Her story is a reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters. They pass background checks. They work security. They smile at the door. And sometimes survival comes down to a single moment, a single breath, a single decision in the face of certain death. This was Unlocked Confidential. Subscribe for more serious investigative crime stories where survival, justice, and truth are all on the line.